People were dancing, sweethearts romancing under that beautiful moonlight. We were so gay as night turned to day, as I proposed that night. Northern lights gleaming, we were a-dreaming of days to come. Music was playing, dancers were swaying to the northland waltz.
Well, when we first came up here, I knew everybody. You know, you just knew everybody because they came from the same place we did.
It was like going back to the 30s.
There was nothing, there was no road, just an old wagon trail, stumps about 2 feet high.
Something that'll never be again, I guess.
We started with some chickens and a good Jersey cow, a team of mules and an old rocking plow. But we seemed to manage and get along somehow here on the old homestead. I built a log shack that I thought would really do, but I had to add to it for one or two. And we were so happy just seeing life through here on the old homestead.
Oh no, there were people here from early on, and in the, you know, and before 1920 there was somebody out here.
Oh yeah, my folks come from the States. They left in 1917. They arrived here in 1919. They come by covered wagon. I was born in the Red Cross Outpost Hospital in Booscoopy in 1926. They took me on horseback when I was about 3 weeks old or a month old.
In the spring of 1934, we came down from Montney, north of Fort St. John, in a covered sleigh, crossed the bridge at Fort St. John. Wasn't a bridge there, but crossed the water. There was about 6 inches of water on top of the ice. And I don't know if it was in there, but coming down the hill, I think it was, that kind of tipped, and there was Mom's trunk kind of fell over, and so we had some exciting times. Mom taught us at home, our correspondence, of course.
Residential school, Catholic.
In Sturgeon Lake.
Sturgeon Lake, yeah. You were not even allowed to talk Cree. Even when you first got in there, you had to talk English.
English.
And you don't know,
And they
I
didn't
never
know
knew a
English.
word of English when I went in there. And they give you a spanking if you don't. And boy, that thing hurt you just like a, I don't know what it
If they
was.
spoke Cree, they
just
might
a
have
rubber, you know, just flimsy. One slap like this, just even from like that, boy, that thing just burned. I got a lot of that when I was in there, till I was 16 years old. I went in when I was 7, and then I got on the train from there to Dawson Creek for $2.75, I think it was. In them days, $2.75. Then I come with a mailman to Grumbers, 50 cents. And then from there I walked to East Pine.
He had come from Germany in about 1928, I think, where there was worldwide depression. And he landed up on the prairies where he worked for a farmer there seeding, so he drove, 8 horses seeding and that sort of thing. And then he'd heard about the great Peace River country, where the water always ran and the grass was always green. And so he came up then, probably 29 or 30, but he settled at Moberly, so he had a place at Moberly. That's where his cabin was. And of course the trappers, the trap lines were all registered, so a lot of the First Nations people from Moberly had trap lines around here. And trapping was how they made their cash for quite a long time.
But in them days, the first year I trapped, 1939, I think it was, up to Chikunka, we had to go on pack horses. We left here in March, I think it was, and I had no horse to ride, and he said, ride that one. It wasn't even, had a rope on it or anything. Well, I saddled him up and took him on the ice, and he couldn't buck very well because he couldn't stand up.
In the wintertime, he would go to Hudson's Hope for supplies, not the route where the road is now, but a little farther to the east, on Morris Creek, I think it is. They would take their team and wagon and go, a team and sleigh at that time, and then go to Hudson's Hope and cross on the ice of the Peace River. There being no dam at that time, so there was ice. And they would go there until the ice went out. So, of course, the exciting stories of the last trip for groceries and the water filling in behind the tracks, you know, as they raced across the ice. And then in the summertime, they would make the trip with team and wagon into Dawson Creek. 3 days in, a day to shop, and 3 days back out again. Wow. And they had to, at East Pine, there's no ford. So they would unhook the wagons and swim the horses across, and the wagon would have to be slung across on their cables. They had a cable.
Yeah.
She sure helped me a lot.
Did she?
If it hadn't been for her, boy, I would have had one heck of a time, because I had to pull across 2 rivers in the basket. And 200 pounds in the basket was a lot. And then the cables sagged like that, and the rope, and you had to grab a hold of the hook and put it in the back, you know, behind, and then from there pull yourself up.
Wow.
And then while she got out and tied the rope, well, I tied the rope. While she tied the rope, I hung on to the basket. And then we went with a wheelbarrow to the next basket. There was nothing there in Little Prairie, just Bob Nicholson, eh?
Yeah.
Just he lived right in the muskeg over
And
there.
Pete Woodmark had it before Nicholson did, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they took over the post office, and it was, I guess you'd call it a trading post. My dad traded, he bought furs from the different people coming through, some of the early settlers and some of the natives came through the dog teams, and they'd come up and trade furs, and the ladies had moccasins and trade tea and flour and lard and all the basics in those days. Dad used to go for the mail every week, go to East Pine on Tuesday and come back Wednesdays. And I went with him a time or two, and that was a heyday. I mean, that I was excited for days about that. Fun we had was when our friends from Moberly came over, and their family put up a teepee, and we had a lot of good memories of those days.
Oh, I could hardly wait. I'd read Jack London, you know, that wonderful story where the guy, the tenderfoot, is slogging through the bush, and you tell how cold it is, you can spit. And if it crackles before it hits the ground, it's 40 below. Well, I could never spit when it was 40 below. So I never did find out if it worked.
I was milking a cow, and I'd put one hand under the arm like that to keep warm, and milk with his hand, and I'd shade off. And then when I went to go to the house, well, I getting pretty cold, so I thought I'd speed it up a little bit, and my cheeks cracked here. Just before I got to the house.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing sticks out in my mind. I was thinking, Mom, she must have, you know, just us 4 kids and miles from anybody. Worry about, you know.
It all began up in the Rocky Mountains where the
roads till they put the oil well in 1939, was it? Or 40? And they built the first passable for trucks to go on the road.
And when they first built the road, they used Fresnos and
Right.
tractors and horses. Or was there any tractors? I
No,
don't
no,
think
no,
so.
no, direct.
Just all horses and
Just the
Fresno.
Fresnos, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in 1950, I think they broke the way through to Prince George across the bridge at the Parsnip River.
When they surveyed the hard highway, I worked there. Yeah. I walked from Commotion Creek to Parsnip River. 5 months, I made $281. Well, I bought a suit, $20, tailor-made, right in Dawson Creek.
Yeah.
And a pair of riding boots. I don't even know what the heck I done with that suit. I don't think I ever wore the darn.
I think I came in 1955 in the September, early or late August. I was coming to teach at Little Prairie Elementary. I particularly wanted a one-room school with native children and others out in the boonies somewhere. So I looked it up in all the records at the BCTF offices in Vancouver and found Little Prairie and applied. And a friend and I drove up over the gravelly Hart Highway. Bumpity bump. They'd had a school for 3 years already, but it must have been hard slogging in the very beginning. And it was still hard slogging because the readers were Puff and Spot and Dick and Jane and all that stuff. You know, the kids really couldn't quite relate to that. There were over 20 kids in school, and some of them came not speaking any English.
Is that right?
Yes, the little ones had never spoken English, so I have no idea what they learned, but they did grow up and
Wow.
join the world and do good things.
My mother had written to the Home Living Hearts page in the Free Press a letter telling about the Pine River Valley. And, it's, you know, just so he got interested. He wanted to see this Pine River Valley. So they went up north to, they drove up on a old truck, and Lyle separated with them at Dawson Creek, and they went north, and he stayed in Dawson Creek, and he used to get up early in the morning, and he went to have coffee or breakfast, and this old trapper was there, and they got talking about it, and this George Goodrich was from the Pine River Valley. Well, that George was looking for somebody to help him take up his garden at that time. And that just suited Lyle just right. He came out, and as a consequence, George talked him into staying the winter and trapping with him. And then, of course, they'd come down for groceries, and that's where I first met him. This is taken in my folks' old place at the where the BCR repeater station was here in Chetwynd. I'd have been 22, and he's coming on to 30. He'd be about 28, I guess. He's 6 years older than me.
Most of the people, like Berlingers and Lyle Schoenberg and all of those, they came from the same place we did.
The Campbells came up as Mr. and Mrs. Bill Campbell. And as a consequence, the Embrys followed up, and the Gerstels came up, and the different ones.
There was nothing in Saskatchewan. Well, there wasn't much for jobs.
Yeah.
And we really weren't into farming. So. Well, actually, he came because they were building the railroad.
The arrival of the train that sent the horses galloping around, that big hoot, you know. Our gentle horses leaped out of the corral and galloped across the field the first time they heard it. They never jumped anything, but they did just then because it was, after all, a monster. came through, and the railway and the pipeline, and things developed then. Yes, they did. By then, they were beginning. There wasn't electricity yet, but very soon, old Mr. Campbell, you know, got in, and they had electricity in the schools and that. So I don't suppose I thought about it too much.
Yeah.
And then I married Otto, and we lived out here, and we certainly didn't have electricity or anything else like that for a long time. Not until Elfrida was past grade 1. So, I mean, 10 years later before it came out this way. But there was electricity in town within 2 or 3 years of when I first came, before this 1960.
Well, we had a farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We raised cattle. And we also had a sawmill, a small sawmill.
You did?
Up the Sekunka, yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, there were small sawmills all around here.
Yeah.
Gordon Moore used to buy lumber.
Large lumber.
And the part of the land that the hotel sits on now, on that side of the creek, right from the creek all the way over and all the way up to the bank. And that was all where Gordon Armstrong?
Yes.
Gordon Armstrong had the planer mill.
Yes, and they were very small sawmills. Gee, to saw 1 million board feet was a huge thing. Most of them were 50,000 or 100,000, 2 men affairs or 3 men, you know. Well, we had cattle and horses, and he was an outfitter, so he took parties out into the bush. Well, I'd been brought up in Duncan on Vancouver Island in the country, so I wasn't totally, but it was certainly a severe culture shock to come from Vancouver up to the Peace River country.
Actually, the only time I felt isolated was when it was time to have your babies and you had to go all the way to Dawson Creek when you were in labor. 65 miles on those roads were not nice. Well, Poose, yeah, because Dawson Creek was full. I had to go on to Poose.
Because the road still wasn't paved. And if you were due in April, say, when the frost was coming out of the ground, you had to make the decision about whether you were going to go in and stay in Dawson Creek, because from the top of the East Pine Hill on the other side all the way to Blask's Corner was all through that wet willow type country. So the mud would be like this, you know, it would be frozen at night if it got that low. But in the daytime, it would just be a great big soup for how many? 10 kilometers? I don't know how far that is. It's quite a way.
Yeah.
4 maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, a long way. And so people, but there weren't that many. Nobody ever, as far as I know, delivered on the road or failed to make it in or whatever. But there weren't very many people then. Yeah. And then the doctors in Dawson Creek were exhausted with all I think that Dawson Creek had a higher birth rate than New Delhi, India, or something. You know, it was per you know the per unit of population. When you went to the doctor's office, 80% of the people were like this. You know, there were a few other out-of-place people, you know, with broken legs or something, but everybody was out to here. What? Yes, before the pill came, you know, there were a lot of babies.
Yeah.
When people talk about school closures now, what do they think? Throw away the pill.
I was a nurse in the very first
I
doctor's
wanted to
office
find
we
out
had in
whether
Chetland.
it's been cancelled or not.
Nurse receptionist, Dr. Christensen. People think it was Lennox, but it wasn't. It was Christensen. He didn't stay here very long. I think he came in the spring and left in the fall. He got so frustrated because he'd see maternities and he'd try to get into Dawson in time to deliver them and he wouldn't make it.
No, Monday's
And he
good
said
looking
to me one time, we're nothing but a glorified first aid station. And I guess that's the way why he didn't stay.
We didn't have any money, and most people didn't have a whole lot of money, so and summer was spent haying. When the kids were little, we were busy haying, and all summer long, so they were there too. And our big thing was on Labor Day, before school started the next day, we would take a walk. The community was very small, and so the parties were what the Little Prairie Ladies Club put together. They were exciting times then. We would clean out Ernie's garage and sweep all the oil out and move everything out. And I would go into Dawson Creek in my pickup and pick up National Film Board reels, you know, to bring out, and we would show movies. And that was the first time some of the kids had ever seen a movie.
Yeah.
And in those days, there were picnics. That is, each community had a picnic, and you went to the other community and played their ball teams. You know, so
Ernie had a garage, beside it a big garage. That's where we had our dances. That was all the music there was, accordion and violin and a guitar.
Guitar, yeah.
Yeah. Not like now. They call it music, but
Was alcohol a big part of socializing?
Yeah, it was. That's one thing I noticed when I came up here, that at home we didn't have the tables full of liquor, but up here they did.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was something new to me. I mean, we had lots of house parties in Saskatchewan, and someone might bring something, but not the way it was up here.
well, they made their own moonshine.
Vanilla extract or lemon extract?
Yeah,
They used that,
yeah,
would they?
yeah. At each pint. For the Indians, you get only one bottle, I think, then.
They only allowed
And you weren't allowed in beer parlor until about 1950, I think it was, or 40, 49, 50, yeah.
And as for the drinking, well, I never noticed it when I first came up because I wasn't drinking and there wasn't a liquor store. I mean, you had to go to Dawson Creek or Ernie, you know, somebody probably brought liquor out, but it wasn't part of my life at that time.
They were building on the community hall down there, and everybody pitched in and worked with them. And I remember Ernie Fanner made moose stew, and everybody had moose stew and biscuits.
So that's another building,
You helped build that.
community building. Me and Gene Embry and Joey Embry built that.
The Little Prairie ladies raised money, and the gentlemen and the men, you know, and we raised built the hall. Oh yes, okay, the library. Well, for the first year I was teaching, it was the second year the Public Library Commission had sent out a van and traded, you know, like left you with 50 books to lend out to the people in the community. So we had that, but then the Little Prairie Ladies Club raised money. And we built the little building. I think it was $600 we had to raise, or something. It was hard to raise money in those days. And that one part of it was the library, and the other part, there was a room for the public health nurse to give her needles to little children. Yes. So that would have been back in, you know, the late 50s when we did that. We got the garbage dump up on the top of the hill, which is now, then they moved it over to where it is now. But that was, before I came, the people had organized a cemetery because someone had died, so they needed a space, so they had already done that. And we got those community grounds, which the fellow that was with the Department of Lands knew was right next to the school site, so it would be a good place. So we did that and cleared that years ago, had bees, you know, when everybody came, the whole community came out, and we served our moose stew and raisin pie lunches to people.
I skidded the logs off of the piece of ground that the mill sits on today, Canford, and Tommy Nichols sawed the lumber out of the logs. I should say that I used Jimmy Grant's cat and Bobby Nicholson's cat, Jimmy and Bobby. And then we worked with Fort St. John Lumber and worked with them and thing. And eventually they sold up to Canford.
Now what happened? It had a one room, and then they brought in another classroom, and then did something burn down, and they brought a two-room one in. And when it got to that, then they built Windrum. And that was, what was that, 1963, I think.
Bennett Dam came in.
64.
Did they hire a lot of people out of the Chetwynd area to work on that?
Not too many.
Was that a bit of a...
The odd one of us got up there and done a little bit until they found out we were local people, and then we were told we could go home.
Well, in those days, when there was a construction thing, and people came to, the whole family came, and the kids, and there were little kids. Nowadays, well, Daddy might come and work for 4 days and then go off, and Mother stays where she is because she's got a job now. In those days, the women didn't necessarily, weren't out working. They were at home with the kids.
You maybe
Oh, I
didn't
always
even-
thought I was very lucky
You
to
did,
be,
so you
to have
knew.
chosen a community that just happened to grow and
Yeah.
come up into modern times. So
Yeah.
whereas some of the places are, they've either, nothing has happened or they're just still exactly the same as they were.
Well, we didn't think of ourselves as pioneers because Bud Campbell's father, old Bill Campbell,
Yeah.
he started an electric light company, so we all had power. And I mean, if you have power, you don't consider yourself a pioneer, really, do you?
Yeah, I wasn't a city person. I knew I would not enjoy life in the city, so
Yeah, so you
found
knew that.
the wildest part I could find at the moment.
Everybody lived happily. We had a lot of fun. You know, there's some guys from West End, that was the reserve up there, and the East End band, and the Maidis lived in between.
I didn't know any different. The only thing I missed later years, I realized, is the gathering, like for picnics, and I don't know too much about baseball and, you know, games like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the fondest memories then, in this sense, to go quite apart from the family and the children, but the early years was the social times with the Little Prairie Ladies Club. Many of whom, a few have died, and some are they're aging, but they have remained, those women, active in the community until they no longer could be active, and some still are active. And the picnic days and the ball, when we had a good ball team and we beat Dawson Creek and, you know, all those kinds of things. They were very good social times when the community was one, more or less. Yeah, it was one.
Yeah.
Very hard to maintain that oneness as communities get bigger.
My fondest memory, let's see, when I was
Yeah.
a child. I didn't think much of entertainment in them days.
We were running around all those fields.
Well, when my dad would take us up on the Tuscola Mountain with a big tree.
And it is amazing when you talk to people, how much you find out about their lives and, you know, all that's gone on for them and how full a life is, how packed it is with grief and happiness and all those kinds of things. I think it's a very good place to live.
There's a place I know I'm thinking of. I long to be there in the land I love. There my childhood days, o'er the hills I'd roam. Why did I leave my peace river home? Through the peaceful rise, where the wind blows free, my heart goes back there with my memories. I see my
How many was in your residential school?
Well, there were 63 girls, I remember that, and 63 boys.
And
Yeah.
and his brothers and sisters went there, and they were not allowed to speak to each other.
No.
Not like how you guys get to
You-
talk.
You were not even allowed to talk Cree.
Yeah, they couldn't speak their own
Yeah,
language.
even when you first got in there, you had to talk English.
English.
And you don't know.
And they
I
didn't
never
know
knew a
English.
word of English when I went in there. And they give you a spanking if you don't. And boy, that thing hurt. It's just like I don't know what it
If they
was.
spoke Cree, they
Just
got
a
it.
rubber, you know, just flimsy. One slap like this, just even from like that, boy, that thing just burns. I got a lot of that when I was in there. You weren't even allowed to look at a girl. And it was pretty hard to do because they were all... Because you were sitting amongst, you know, the
All
the
together?
grades and, you know, in school. Yeah.
So in other words, you never had a girlfriend there. Did you have a girlfriend in residential school? Did you
Well, in the Kimut.
On the side.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you just play outside at night, you know, and you're the... But there was nothing in between there.
Hop over.
Mixed up. Yeah. It's quite the place.
Did you get to go home for holidays? When you're-
Christmas and Easter and New Year's.
That's the only time you
And
got to
then
go home?
July and August.
Oh, you had summer holidays?
Yeah.
You never got to go home for Thanksgiving?
Did you get to go home for Thanksgiving?
No. Just Easter, Christmas, and New Year's. That's all you went
And
home.
your summer holidays?
And the summer holidays, yeah. Some of them didn't go back. They'd hide for about a week out in the bush, but then apparently they had to go home because they were getting hungry, I guess, or something. And when they get to school, they get a licking.
How did you learn how to play the fiddle, Simon?
Well, they kicked me out of school because I beat the heck out of a nun. Yeah.
Maybe tell us why you beat the heck out of the nun.
Yeah.
Talikikapagamahat.
Well, I was sitting there. I wasn't doing anything, just reading. And she kept looking at it. She slammed the darn ruler on the desk and said, "There's always something going on around here, and I know who's the cause of it." And she was looking straight at me. "Sure as hell ain't me," I told her. And then she said, "You stay after school," because I said, I swore, like, you know. And by God, I figured you were going to get it this time, I said. And the broomsticks you cut years ago, you used to put for opening the window. It's just
Broom
about that
handles?
long, you know. So I figured when she come at me, she come at me with that broomstick. I took it away from her, and first thing I did pull that thing off her from top of her head. And then I got her skirt up, and I really give her that licking out. I bet she was black and blue when the time I was through with her. I got kicked out of there for 3 months. I'd sit in the hall all day doing nothing. The next time she gave me a licking, she hit the desk with them pointers. They were about 4 or 5 feet long, and she broke it. And then she says, "You fix that." So I took it, and I just put it along like this, and just gave it to her in 5-piece or 6-piece. Here, I said, "I fixed it." So she said, "You stay in after school." That's the same nun. So I said, "Okay, we'll stay in." And all the boys were looking through the window, see what I was going to do. Well, she come at me. She had a switch this time, a big, long willow. Boy, I took that switch and I gave it to her good.
Twice you hit her?
Huh?
Twice you beat her up?
Twice I beat her up, yeah. That was my last year in there. And I was supposed to get out of there when I was 16. That was the January the 3rd. They wouldn't let me out.
They wouldn't let you out January the 3rd?
No, 'cause that was when I was 16. I
Yeah.
should have gone out then.
Yeah. When did you get out? In June, right?
Yeah.
But you learned to play the fiddle after that, Simon?
Well, I played, there was a nun, it was real nice. She was real nice, that nun. She says, what are you sitting there for? So why don't you try and play the fiddle? So I took it. It wasn't tuned or anything, but I just whacked away on it. And one day I was walking across the yard, there comes a guy. He had something in his hand, just staggering down across the yard. I recognized my cousin. I come in there and he nun opened the door for him and he says, come on in, he says. And first thing he said, here, you want a snort? To the nun. It was home brew, he had in a gallon jug. So he seen me sitting over there, he came over, tuned the fiddle and played through. He was a real good fiddle player. So he told me, he showed me how to tune it, and he says, master one piece until you can play it good. He said, from there on you can play anything. I did that, and that's how I learned. Yeah.
How old were you?
16.
16.
Yeah.
And what was that piece, Simon? What was that? What was the piece that you learned to play?
The Isle of Capri. You know that song, yeah?
You had to learn that song, then you'd be able to play anything after that?
Yeah, I learned it, played it over and over and over all day long, and one day I tried to play another one. I played it, and I played for all the dances that came along until I come up here. Now I don't play it anymore. My fingers are not too stiff. Oh, once in a while, play a couple of tunes and that's it.
But I did move that trailer one time with 4 horses, tandem,
Is that right?
on it.
Where were you going?
Up the hill in Saskatchewan.
We were starting to come this way. We're from Brother Charlie's farm, when we had to move it out, the trailer out up to the highway. And we tried it in the morning with the truck, Gene's truck, and we tried to pull it with his little one-ton International he had. And Rudolph's cockshot 40, Rudolph Fusteller, cockshot 40. And we weren't getting nowhere, and Rudolph finally said, you know, he said, that thing don't pull that heavy. He said, I got a team of horses that can pull it up the hill. So we unhooked the thing off of the truck and got the truck out of the road, and we put the front sleighs of the bob sleighs, and set the trailer on that and pin.
That would have been the time to have a movie camera.
Yes.
And we used it, put the extra team of horses in front, Charlie's team of horses in front, and they just, half an hour we were up the highway.
Easy with real horsepower.
That was the trailer that when he brought it into Charlie's yard, like that's his brother.
Yeah.
They had a little girl.
Yeah.
And she thought Auntie Florence had a nice new playhouse.
Yay, Auntie Florence is here. What a little cutie.
Yeah.
And did you stay in the trailer the first little while?
10 years
We stayed in the
without water
trailer
and sewer.
until we moved into this house.
When we had a picnic, then along came Progress. They had 3 or 4 or 5 bigger boys, and then they had a bunch of younger kids. And the big boys would yell at the other kids, and they said, we were beating them, of course, because I had a disciplined team.
They were teamwork. They knew how to work
Teamwork, yes, supporting one another, only good things. And the big boys, hey, can't we just, us 4 or 5, play you and send the other kids out? And I said, no, it's a team. You got to have the girls who can't catch. And so, of course, we beat them.
Oh, Dead Man Creek, that's halfway down there where, yeah, you know where the Dead Man Creek, huh? You know where Dead Man Creek is?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know where it is. It's just, you get up the hill where, you know where Pat got killed right there in the, just that straight stretch down below.
What did they call it, Dead Man's Creek?
Well, there was a guy, as an old trapper, that was the year I come up in this country, 1938. And he was trapping, I don't know where, way up the Hassler or way up over the mountain somewhere towards Prince George. And he come to sell his fur in Moberly. And that was in April. It's already, the snow was all gone, and it snowed. And I guess he must have got cold or what the heck. He had all his fur on his back. And Mr. Davis, Philip Davis, grandpa, he was coming to Little Prairie on that. There's a real nice pack trail that comes through there. And I guess he come to that one place. He seen the track. Somebody going across the lake, was going to cross the lake, going to the Hudson Bay store. And then he said he seen the track come back again and come back up the hill. And then there's a camping spot, a real nice camping spot up there, just above Dead Man. And then he heard somebody hollering. So he got his horse going fast, and there he seen that guy sitting under a spruce tree, just hollering. So he built a big fire for him and put him close to the fire. He'd get up and go and sit under another spruce tree. He was already, you know, it's cold, you know, and all that. And so he got scared, you know, superstition. He was superstitious, he's an old timer. And he come to get Harry Garbage at the Hudson Bay. Well, they went up right away. By the time he got there, he was dead. Yeah, that's why they call it Dead Man.
And I went on the ambulance when we first came up.
Oh, really? For
Yeah.
what?
So when Buddy got hurt, we took him to Dawson Creek.
Because you were a nurse.
Yes.
So that was one of your first jobs in Chetwynd.
Well, Wink Wheeler had the ambulance at first, and then when they got regular ambulances, they rounded up anybody who would go. And we didn't get paid. We went free.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Volunteers.
I remember one night I was just dishing up supper when the call came, and I left about 6 o'clock, and I didn't get home till 10 o'clock that night.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. I bet you they were pretty thankful for people with medical background, eh?
There was only the odd person said thank you. I don't think they realized that we didn't get paid.
That it was volunteer.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have major obstacles when you first came?
Well, I got stuck in every little mud puddle there was because I didn't know how to drive. That was an obstacle.
Yeah.
And once I was invited out for dinner by one of the, the mother of one of the children. And I showed up at 6 o'clock, but they had dinner at lunchtime, at noon, and that was a culture thing. I hadn't said, what time shall I come? She said dinner, and I thought dinner's at night, but for them, dinner was at noon. So those kinds of, would you call that a major obstacle?
No.
No, I mean, as I say, it was like going back, being a kid. In the 30s, it was like that in Duncan, Cook's Island, where I went to school, so it wasn't so far. My school, one-room school, had a big wood heater in the middle of it, too.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't so different.
Yeah.
And outside John's and all those kinds of things, it was not new. It was not strange.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just part of
It was, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and you...
Oh, when I first got here?
Nigan kapirottiin te go tastio. Auna ta wiget.
Here?
Yeah.
In Chetwynd?
Yeah.
Oh, Nicholson. Bob Nicholson. And then Windrum lived up where the park is, over here, up the Windrum Creek. And then from there, the next one was right up at CFI. Wilkie Smith was his name. And the next one was up at Twidwell Bend, Arnold Monk. And the next one is another 10 miles down this one. No, Bizette Creek, George Johnson. And the next one was the Old Man Johnson, another 10 miles down. And across the bridge were the Hassler. Ivor Johnson lived there. And from there, Phil Eswine used to, his name up in Willow Valley. And that was the end of the road. There was no road further on. Yeah, that's the only people that lived here. Old Frank Twidwell, but he never was. He was always up in the mountains year round. He owned Twidwell Bend. We took horses and Joe, your uncle, Joe Callio.
Oh.
He had 2 horses. We'd turn them loose. In the evening, he went looking for them. He didn't find them. So the next day, he took off early in the morning. Like there were just the 2 of us. Would be my brother-in-law was Leo, and we were just young fellas. We'd never been out in the bush before, you know. We were scared. So we climbed up at the tree and sat up there. My God, it was getting close to midnight. Couldn't figure out what happened. And finally we heard him cough. Oh, we come down that tree as fast as could be. Yeah. We never did find them horses. Still never found them. And in 1946, I was working for Otto Eldon on the seismic. We started from Willow Flats up here and come out up the Bull Moose Mountain. And we went up to Kinnersu Falls, way up there. And I was walking along, me and Ernie Callio. I says, I'm going to go straight across here. So I says, the camp is down here. We circle around like this. I'm not going to walk up there. I says, when the camp is just about a mile down below. So he said, I'll go with you. And we tracked horses up there, colts and horses. That must be off of them 2 mares. See, we bred them when we were leaving here at Twidwell Bend with Arnold Monk's stallion there. And apparently he had colts, I guess, and they grew up. So I told Otto, I said, I tracked your horse up beside that little lake up on top of the hill. He said, what, a little lake? I never knew there was a little lake around here. I said, yeah, there is one up on top of the hill here. And I seen lots of horse tracks and colt tracks. Well, they got to be wild horses, he said. That was after. That was 1939 we trapped up there. And this was 1946. So they must have survived. There probably still some up there, I don't know. Could be, you know, because wild horses they can survive anywhere.
Then in those other years, then we had a little booth there and we sold things. And one year I had the bright idea, well, let's make a batch of root beer, and sell that because we made root beer. You see, we used to make root beer at home when I was a child. So I thought, oh, this root beer is cheap, 2 cents a bottle. We'd make a mint here, selling it for 10 cents, 8 cents profit. Wow. Yeah, well, by the time the picnic came along, of course, the root beer was quite fizzy. So people had a heck of a good time, shaking it and shooting.
Oh, when I first got here?
Nikan kapirottiin te voi tastio. Oh, not the Wigan.
Here?
Yeah.
In Chetwin?
Yeah.
Oh, Nicholson. Bob Nicholson. And then Windrum lived up where the park is, over here, up the Windrum Creek. And then from there, the next one was right up at CFI. Wilkie Smith was his name. And the next one was up at Twidwell Bend, Arnold Monk. And the next one is another 10 miles down this one. No, Bizette Creek, George Johnson. And the next one was the Old Man Johnson, another 10 miles down. And across the bridge were the Hassler. Iver Johnson lived there. And from there, Phil Eswine used to, his name up in Willow Valley. And that was the end of the road. There was no road further on. Yeah, that's the only people that lived here. Old Frank Twidwell, but he never was. He was always up in the mountains year round. He owned Twidwell Bend.
Well, I came up here to stay because in my family there are fur traders.
Yeah.
There's that, you know, everybody left home and went out west, and so that runs. You know, nobody's sort of living around where their mummies and daddies, where they all left and went off into the little piggies, you know, going off into the world. And I thought, oh, well, it suits me. I wasn't a city person. I knew I would not enjoy life in the city, so found the wildest part I could find at the moment.
We started with some chickens and a good Jersey cow, a team of mules and an old rocking plow. But we seemed to manage and get along somehow here on the old homestead. I built a log shack that I thought would really do, but I had to add to it for one or two. And we were so happy just sing life through here on the old homestead. Modernized on the old farm now, combine tractors and a tin can cow. We don't seem to have any time somehow here on the old homestead. I built a modern home that I'm sure will really do, 'cause it's big enough for a dozen or two. And we're all so happy to sing life through here on the old homestead. by helping those who are in need. My life on earth is but a span, and so I'll do the best I can.
This evening sun
is sinking low,
A few more days,
a few more days,
and I must go
to meet the